Now, if I have the basic idea of trust, and I don't have shame and doubt, I'm a person with a right to how I feel and what I'm doing. I have the initiative, I have direction in my life, I have the skills to produce and to build and create, and the satisfaction that comes from all of these. And I have an identity, I have an idea of what my life is about, what I want, what's important in my life. And now I come to this great thing of 18 to 35, where we get into intimacy or loneliness. Intimacy or isolation, Erickson says. Of course, we would like to have love, wouldn't we, and affection. Well, shouldn't that be the happy lot of all of us? To have somebody that's close to us? To have somebody that's really close, that we can confide in, a very, very best friend? Someone that loves us? But the problem is that if you've got shame and doubt, and if you don't develop that way, do you think I want to sit here in front of a girl that I respect and open up my soul? What is she going to see? In my life, I will tell you, I don't want that, because I don't feel very good about myself. I could never do anything quite good enough to me. It seemed like I could never, ever get that praise that I needed. I was always struggling. My life has become an effort to compensate for how bad I feel. That's the basis of addictions, that we start to try to make up and get rid of the pain. We medicate our pain about how bad we feel about ourselves with drugs or alcohol or sex, work, buying, spending, you know. We medicate that. All right, if I want intimacy, I've got to feel good about myself. I've got to feel confident about myself to open up. And if I've got parents that are always criticizing, and it's never good enough, parents who have these unrealistic expectations about me, how on earth will I ever feel okay about myself? How on earth will I ever feel safe and secure to open up? I would like to be able to open up and my wife say, I see everything about you. I see everything about you. You're a good man. I love you just like you are. And I don't have to shrink away. And I don't have to feel ashamed. I don't have to be guarded and make myself obscure from her gaze. Do you understand where I'm coming from? Now, I'm ashamed. How many of you feel that you're really kind of not okay? Could I see by hands? Are you brave enough already? Raise them up high. You feel there's something wrong. If we were open up, we wouldn't like you. Okay, that's a big majority. You come from shame homes, and the rest of you that didn't raise your hand, okay, you just don't know what we're talking about yet. Because we come from this. I don't think that there's really, I think 95, 100% of the homes have these difficulties. Nobody's perfect. But see what happens, the tragedy of this is that I pass my insecurities, my shame onto my kids. And they pick it up, big old chunks of this shame. They just pick it up. Because as I said, my dad acted shameless in a way to show that he wasn't shamed at all. He couldn't be. He didn't want to be shamed. I asked my wife, sweetheart, do you love me? She says, yes, I love you. Why would I ask a question like that? Where is the question? It's deep inside me. It's deep in me. Honey, do you love me? She says, yeah, I love you. Why do you always ask me that? I said, do you really love me? Yeah, I do. And I said, why? And it took her a real long time to answer. So I don't ask her that anymore. Now, if I really truly feel that way about myself, and I'm getting a lot better. I was really bad before. Now I look at all of you, and I know you're all like me. Before I didn't know that. I felt isolated, all alone, that I was the only nut. That I was the only person that felt like this. Whenever I have classes, I ask, and once people understand what we're talking about, they almost all raise their hand. They all feel inadequate and shamed at some level. And by their behavior, you can tell they're shamed. Now, if I really feel there's nothing good about me, not really good about me, two questions. Why? Where did I come from? Why did I ever get an idea like that? One. And two, how could I ever be really intimate? How could I feel safe to open up and to be loved and to really love? Well, I can't. And it's been hard. And to make up for that big void, to make up for that big hurt in me, to not ever feel adequate, my life has been a compensation. So I'm a workaholic. That's better than alcohol. But do you think my kids were just as neglected? Do you think Daddy was there for these kids? I was emotionally not there for them, except to correct them. Get in there and take care of that now. You know, that isn't what they needed. They needed the affection. They needed to know that there was a man that had some feelings. They needed to know that Papa was afraid. Do you think I could ever show those kids that I was afraid? No way, Jose. Do you think my kids ever saw me cry? Because men don't cry, man. Only weenies cry. Only twits cry. The car breaks down, you don't cry, you fix it. Somebody hits you, you knock you down, you get back up and hit them back. You don't cry. Crying doesn't do anything. See, this old macho stuff? Crying does a lot. When I finally got to a point at about age 50, when I could cry, I scared myself to death. Because I'd been stuffing that stuff so long. I'd just got this pressed down so long, I would never cry. Because, you see, to have emotions is to be out of control. To not be in control is the great fear of a dysfunctional family. Because if we're not in control, we can't keep hiding our shame. Make sense? So I'm always into control. I have to control everything. My kids, my work. So my life was really, really controlled. And then, when all of a sudden I reached a point where I couldn't control my life, I got to a point again, after a lot of struggle, where I could cry. And when I cried the first time in about 40 years, I just came from the bottom of my stomach, great, huge sobs. And you know how a little kid cries? You know how they do? Just sobs. I was crying. I was sitting here, disassociating, kind of watching what was happening to me. I could not believe. And I wept, and I wept, and I wept, and I cried over this son, who to me was lost at that point in time. Totally lost to drugs. Changed personalities. Well, I came to this crisis in my life then when I could not be in control anymore. And I had to look in other places for answers other than what I'd been taught. That all you do is get more powerful. If your things are not in control, then you need to get more powerful. And if the kid's out of hand, you need to get more powerful. And what does that develop in a home? More power and more power and more power. Till finally, when this kid breaks away, and they get out here at 18, 19, 20, do you think you can continue to control a kid? You cannot. I promise you, you can't. You can't keep your kids from doing drugs if they want to, unless you're going to tie a couple big guys on them and handcuff them and walk them back and forth to school. You can't keep your kids in. We would say, good night, everybody, and go to bed, and somebody called me at 3 o'clock in the morning and says, hey, you got a kid named such, such, such? I'd say, yeah. Do you know where he is? Yeah, he's in bed. Well, your kid's over here and and this is happening and that's happening. No, my kid's in bed, man. You know? Good night. Well, you better check the bed. I go in and check the bed, guess what? My kid's out partying. I was desperate. I was bankrupt for ideas. There was no place else to go. We ended up in the Phoenix House program, and we ended up in family therapy and individual therapy. We're trying to work through some of these issues. And they're painful. The great thing that I would like to accomplish today is to expose you to some of the tragedies, some of the principles, so that you maybe can think in terms of coming out of this denial. Because denial isn't that you deliberately deny something. Denial is that you really are unaware. You don't know. I didn't know my dad was an alcoholic. I didn't say the word alcoholic till I was 53 or 4 years old. We didn't acknowledge that. I was in denial all my life. And unfortunately, I had some kids and passed that stuff on. Now, what you don't work through, you pass on. What you deny gets passed on. Like 7% of what you communicate to your kids is verbal. You think you're doing a great job. But you want to know what you are really communicating? If you're not really understanding this, you're communicating your shame. And you're communicating your prejudices and your fears and your lousy outlook about yourself. And your lack of boundaries. This is what we communicate. And that's a sad, sad thing. All right. Do we kind of get an idea for this? Can you see where a kid would be if you allow them the right to make all these choices? That means that mom and dad have got to recognize that this child is a free agent and really owes you no allegiance as far as what they believe and what they want to be in life. I don't care if you're an attorney and there's been 100,000 attorneys in a row and this kid wants to be something else. There is no duty to you to be untrue to himself. And if he doesn't want that, then you've got to let it go. Give the child the right and the responsibility to live their own life.